Okay, so today's gonna be a little bit weirder as far as me sharing everything and doing everything. So if it looks different, I'm sorry. Um, Otherwise, we're basically waiting for my desktop to come up, and that's like a 20-minute ordeal. So, things are shared. Feel free to join the stream. All that jazz. And I'm assuming y'all can hear me? I don't know. But good morning. Good morning. And yeah, I'm running off of an iPad for a second screen and Discord. Yeah, so note is going to be a little bit funky. So, but today's not too bad of a lecture. So we should be okay, hopefully. I guess we'll see. Yeah, so I think all of y'all actually turned in your love games. Thank you. I have looked at some of them. Yeah, for some of them, I do wish there had been a little bit more effort. Oh, of course, everything is gonna, like, come up at the same time. Also, I'm sorry, the mic is more sensitive when I'm plugged into my laptop than I am on my desktop. So, you're gonna hear a lot more stuff. I don't know why. I don't ask questions. Oh my gosh, Cat. Yes, I love you. Good morning. Go away. I'm trying to teach. Um, so, yeah, so thank you. Yeah, I would have liked more effort for some of them. However, thank you for at least turning something in and turning it in. I think everybody turned it in before the midnight deadline, which makes me incredibly happy because my level design class at the midnight point, not even half of them had turned it in. So, and at class time, I still had like 10 of them missing. So, yeah. So, thank you. Thank you. That definitely helps with my anxiety. So what you guys need to do now is you're going to play everybody's game because I think I have you guys playing like 4 or 5 extra, and literally there's only 6 of y'all. So, um, yeah, so something like that. So just two others. Cool. You guys are great. So yeah, no, okay, 4. So yeah, so just go ahead and play all of them. Or look at all of them. There's no way for me to tell whether you guys actually play the games or whether you just watch the video presentations and talk about them. Um, so just do that for me. Yeah. Yeah. And okay, so let's go ahead and look at what's happening for the rest of the semester, kind of, before we get into today's lectures. So, we are now done with Lua. I'm sure some of you are saying, yay, no more Lua, no more Lua, we don't have to look at Lua anymore. However, we are now going into Python. So, some of y'all may say, I wish we were still in Lua in a couple of weeks, or at the end of this week. Some of you may say, oh, I like Python so more, why did we ever learn Lua? And yeah, so with Python, you actually have 2 assignments, 2 kind of game assignments. You're going to write a text adventure, and I don't think I give you guys, let's see, do I tell you guys? So yeah, you have to have 20 prompts for the users. So that's like, hello, what is your name? And have the user enter it. Or, would you like to go left or right? And they pick one. Or, um, create some sort of battle mechanisms and do that. I've given you 2 examples, and one of them was written last semester. Wow, it feels like a year now. And if you guys know Kisa, it was written by Kisa, and she made a Bloodborne parody all about cats, which is pretty cool. And then the other one is one that I made when I took this class many moons ago, when this class was only an 8 weeks course. Both of them are blown out examples, so like, don't think you've got to do everything that they do. But they both have some different things in them that may help you or you may like. And you're gonna have about 2 weeks to do that, but I suggest getting it done as soon as you can. And then after that, just like with the Lua situation, you guys are going to have a Python engine that you can work in. And you guys are going to actually have a choice of two different Python engines. One is Pygame, which is kind of the Mac Daddy of all of them, and then the other one is Pixel. And Pixel's really new, so it doesn't actually have a lot of tutorials, but it is easier to code in, and it's super limited. It's like an old school emulator kind of thing. It limits your color palettes, it does all kinds of stuff. But it does have an easier language to follow. Because just like we saw with Love, you had some like the love.load stuff and how to draw images and things like that. Both Pygame and Pixel have their own kind of languages. So that's how that's gonna work. And then after that, I still haven't really decided whether we're gonna do this. I think we're gonna do this, where I'm gonna give you guys a really basic rundown of JavaScript, and then I'm gonna have you guys do Phaser.js through Codecademy, which is it's a add-on library for JavaScript that helps to create HTML5 games. You're not going to have to make a game in it, though. I mean, the Codecademy thing will run you through making a really small game, but that's about it. But what I'm going to do is I'm going to have you, because this course in general will probably get restructured pretty soon here, and I'm kind of trying to see whether there's some better options for you guys to learn, or things that you enjoy learning better. Though I'm not going to lie, I suspect that when we restructure that this course will probably not exist in its current state. It'll probably change to something that actually makes sense for your program or for your production degrees. And then the last thing that you're going to do, the very last thing, is your final project. So, and this is where making nice or decent games for Love and for Pygame or Pixel kind of comes in hand, because your final project is to take one of these games that you've already built and make it better. Now that you've got all the information, now that you've kind of like learned more, you've struggled through it, it's to not redo, but to just to take an old project and make it better. So that's kind of the rest of the semester. Hopefully it's not too crazy. I'm trying, guys. I know this class isn't 100% you guys' priority, but please kind of take it serious. Some of you did for your Love games, some of you did not. Yeah. And I should have grades in tonight for midterm, so I think all of you, at least all of y'all who are in Discord right now, for sure are doing okay. But okay, so with that said, are there any questions about the schedule for like the rest of the semester? Anything like that? Okay, and if you haven't seen, they did send you guys an email about how Northwest Vista is going to work in the spring, which is basically we're still going to be all online. So the official kind of thing is that we can have up to 25% of students in the classroom, which if you're in MLH 200, so the big lab where we usually have like level design and stuff like that, you can only have 5 students in there at a time. So it's just not, for some classes they're going to do it where they've got like, they do one day where they teach online, and then the second day they're going to have an open lab day so that 5 students can sign up to kind of be there with the teacher or with the professor. But a lot of us aren't opting for that because it just doesn't make sense. So like my level design class right now is 22, 23 students. It just doesn't make sense to only have a fifth of the students in the classroom, and I just don't have time for that. And it'll only be Monday through Friday classes, as far as classes that can meet on campus. The labs, however, are scheduled to be open, so like to go see the tutors and stuff like that, you'll have to make an appointment, but they will be open if you desire face-to-face contact. Okay, so, and that's basically all I know about that. If you have any further questions, I don't know, because I don't know. So, okay, so let's get on with Python. Again, this is going to be pretty short today, or let's do one more thing. You actually do have one thing left to do with Love and Lua, and this is your postmortem assignment. And basically, you're going to write a postmortem. And a postmortem is just kind of, it's exactly what it says. After death is what postmortem means. It's so after the project is all done and everything is, and sometimes it's, even with big games, it's like when everything's shipped or when everything's done, you know, what went right, what went wrong, what could I do better, what do I wish I could improve upon, what did you learn, all that kind of jazz. It's just kind of a retrospective. And you can find some really cool ones online as far as examples of them. I have a link to Gamasutra's, but yeah, you can find some other cool ones. Like they, especially for big like gaming conventions, a lot of PAXs, they'll have like a postmortem panel and things like that, so that you can actually see like big studios having a postmortem. They're really cool to watch, and you learn things like how the game was supposed to be this way, and then 3/4 of the way through they switched it to this, and that's why certain things still exist inside of the game. So you do have to write that. If you want extra credit, the Writing Across Curriculum Lab is online. I don't 100% know how to access them. I think I've got a link somewhere inside of your modules for it. I don't know anymore. But if you go to them and they read your essay or help you with your essay, they'll give you like an email or a slip or something, or they'll email me. All you gotta do is show me the proof that you went there, and I'll give you 10 extra points. It's that easy. And it doesn't have to be for them. It doesn't have to be a completed essay. It can be a partial essay if you just want to see like how it's going, or yeah, or it can be a completed essay and they can check your grammar, etc., etc., because I do grade for grammar and things like that on this one. Generally I'm pretty lax about that, except for these, which are considered more of a formal kind of thing. I ask for MLA formatting, but if you don't have MLA formatting, it's not the end of the world. Okay, so Python, because I'm sure nobody wants to be here and you'd rather just get through this. So I have our PowerPoint, which is what we're going to go through today, but I also have Thomas Cochlear's, and this website, again, it looks really old because it probably is really, yeah. It was last updated in 2014, at least this one was, but it's a really good guide as far as how Python works, the essentials, kind of like what you need to do. However, it's like the equivalent of a textbook as far as how long it is, and nobody got time for that if all we're doing is trying to get the nitty-gritty basics down. So yeah. So, okay, let's see. Is this going to actually load this way? Cool. Although I probably wrote this on here. Let's see. Not the Nightmare Before Christmas. Go. No? Okay. I thought I wrote this on here. I guess not. Okay, cool. Well, so much for that. Okay, so Python. And again, sizing and stuff is going to be a little bit different because laptop versus desktop, which may be alive by now. I don't know. Okay, so what is Python? According to their website, Python is powerful, fast, it plays well with others, it runs everywhere, it's friendly and easy to learn, and is open. So what we're going to see is that not all of that is true. Python is ostensibly friendly, but Lua, if you look at how friendly Lua was, Lua looked pretty much exactly like English, except for a small kind of things. Python gets further away from being English and looking more like code. So for some people, it is definitely not more friendly or easy to learn, especially because it's got some quirks that require you to be very specific with certain things. However, it is really powerful. You're going to see, it's used everywhere. It is very fast. it plays incredibly well with others. You can basically wrap all sorts of things. Those of you who are more on the art side, and so like doing Maya stuff and Max stuff, Maya's scripting language, Mel, is actually built off of Python insofar as you can even use Python scripting inside of Maya to do scripting. Um, Again, those of you who are kind of on the art side and do like the 3D stuff, I 100% suggest that if you can, learning at least the basics of MelScript or Python scripting for Maya, or if you're a Max fiend, MaxScript, because there are fewer and fewer people that know how to do it, and the more that you know how to do, the more impressive you look on resumes and things like that, because holy crap, can you make things faster writing a single line of code than actually sitting there and modeling for 20 minutes? And yeah, and I'm like, you could technically program and completely model just through programming. It's not fun. It's not what I suggest. But especially when it comes to like manipulating things or duplicating things or getting things to move and animate, you can do that through code really fast and really easy. So yeah. Sorry, kind of a sideways spiel. Yeah, so it does have a lot of perks to it that we didn't see with Lua. Insofar as that everybody loves it. Um, it has efficient high-level data structures. So whereas in Lua we basically only saw that table kind of thing, Python's got a few more. It runs a few different other things which actually make life nicer, and a simple yet effective approach to object-oriented programming. That's debatable, but it's the idea that it's object-oriented rather than event-driven, which is, it's easier to understand. And if you don't know what that means, it's fine. Don't worry too much about it. Okay, how is Python used in the real world? Well, okay, industrial applications. You have YouTube, you have Quora, you have Dropbox, Cinema 4D, and Maya both use Python scripting. So YouTube is written on top of Python. So is Quora, so is Dropbox. Rackspace here in town basically exclusively runs and uses Python. It used to be that if you could prove that you could even do basic Python, they would hire you, which may have been part of their downfall. But yeah, so games. You've got Doki Doki Literature Club. I guess it's a little outdated now, but that was like the big one for a while. Was 100% built in Python. Battlefield 2 had their add-ons, EVE Online, The Sims, World of Tanks. And if we click this link, we can actually come down here to video games, which is the ones that all of y'all want to know. Civilization 4, Toontown. There's a lot more than this. Vampire the Masquerade Bloodlines, which was impressive as far as things go. Pirates of the Caribbean Online. I didn't know it uses Panda 3D. Yeah, so there's way more than this, but it's actually a pretty widely used language for a lot of different things. Yeah, and The Sims 4, everybody likes The Sims, and I tend to forget about it. But you've got web applications, you have all sorts of things. Now, as far as where you're going to program for this class, again, REPL is easy because it's integrated with REPL, but if you're wanting to use something that you download, this link's got a massive amount of environments. So you've got Eclipse, my favorite is PyCharm. That's the one that I enjoy using, but Atom is also nice because it's cross-platform. It kind of works like REPL, only you download it. So yeah, but Eclipse also has support for it, and NetBeans, if you guys are NetBeans or Eclipse fans. So yeah. So, okay, back over here. So Python, it uses println. It uses the word print. It's really, really easy. Print, and then in parentheses, insert string, like whatever you're going to put. So before Python 3, Python 3 is the current Python. When we were talking about Python 2 and 2.7 and 2. Blah 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 blah, you didn't have to use the parentheses. You could just say print insert string, and that was it. Life was good. So if you see older tutorials where they're just using print and there are no parentheses, that's why. In Python 3, you have to have those parentheses. Like, it's required. Which is a little strange because usually when languages evolve, it goes from the parentheses to the not parentheses, and now it's gone the other direction. But, I mean, I like this. I definitely like this better because it's easier to read. But, yeah. So Python's easy as far as printing. Printing is just print. Insert string here. However, this is the one, this is the reason to hate Python, honestly. You have to indent for each level. You have to put the correct number of spaces. You're going to press the tab key a lot. If you don't, it will automatically break your program, and the hardest thing in the world is to find that place where you actually accidentally press like a tab and a space next to that tab, because Python will pitch a fit at it. Like, if I warn you guys of anything with Python, it's this one. It's got some funky stuff with global variables and stuff like that too, but indenting is the big one. They've gotten rid of some of the issues with it. Like, if you looked at it 5 years ago, it was a lot different, or a lot harder, a lot easier to mess up. But it's still, especially the tabs, are still really finicky. So commenting, where we use the double slash or the double dash for Lua, or if you use a double slash for like C# or etc. etc. For Python, we use, okay, depending on how old you are or where you grew up, the hash mark, the pound sign, the number sign, the tic-tac-toe square, the hash, yeah, we use that symbol. So, that's a comment. That's how comments work. You're going to see the word modules a lot. And all module means is this is a file that includes code. That's it. Now, when you need to import, we kind of saw importing with Lua when we used this idea of require this file, require that file. Python gets, again, a little bit more fancy because it starts looking closer to those of you who have taken level design and done C#, things like using Unity Engine, etc., etc., etc. And you're just going to import name of file. You could just import a little thing, import or from blah blah blah, import the thing, and then if you want to import everything from a file, name of file, import star. However, this is kind of dangerous. It actually doesn't act like you think it's going to because it doesn't bring in certain variables and things like that. And I've got this little warning down here. A lot of this you're not going to use unless you guys get really into it. But just so you know, it's there. It's there. Okay, so functions. Instead of using function like we do with love, or how we would do with other things where we would say like public void blah 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 blah, we do def for definition, and then whatever your function is and the parameters, and a colon. The colon is super important. Every Python function technically has a return statement. Like, that's kind of how it knows to be done with and over. So a return statement, for those that don't really understand what that is that, think of it like an equal sign. So if this entire function is run, what does it equal at the end? So it may be something like it's a function that's checking whether you're walking left or right. So maybe it would be called def is right, and then it would take whatever parameters you needed. And so if you were walking right, it could return true, and if you were walking left, it could return false. And so then you could kind of run that and see where you're at. So that's what the return statement is. It can return numbers, it can return all sorts of things. Probably one of the earliest ones that you guys, okay, I can't say that because I don't know exactly what you guys' coding experience is. But one of the ways that it gets used a lot is like in the calculator function. So it's like you have definition, name of the function, and then the parameters would be like two numbers. So int a and int b, and then in here it would be just return a plus b. So you could do something like that. So variables. Kind of the same way that we did with Lua. They're dynamically typed. So that means that Python will try and figure out what those variables are for you, and they'll flip them on the go as they need to. However, unlike Lua, which is just like, yo, I'm just going to deal with numbers the same way where I do floating point arithmetic the entire time, Python actually kind of does numbers. It does floating points, but it also does whole numbers. So as a result, and we saw this a little bit with Lua, that you could have to cast, but it's not as much of a thing. With Python, you do end up casting floats and ints. And casting is really easy. It's just the thing that you want to cast it to, and then the variable, the thing you want to cast it to, and the variable. Yeah. So they are super case sensitive. So foobar with lowercase f and b is one variable. Foobar with a capital F is another variable. Foobar with a capital F and a b is another variable. Foobar with a lowercase f and a capital B is a different variable. So, and always, as always, they're spelling sensitive, so pick words that you can spell. I was helping somebody the other day. English isn't their first language, and they were trying to spell all sorts of things so that an English-speaking person could easily follow along. But because their spelling isn't that great, they were having a hard time writing variables the same way twice, because they were doing it phonetically, but phonetic isn't always the same. So, pick things that make sense to you. Some of you did this where you did single letter variables. Not a great idea, guys, because figuring out what your single letter variables actually mean can be problematic down the line. Even if you have a key up at the top, you got to remember that key, and once you get past like 3 variables that are single letters that you have to remember, your brain doesn't do it well. So name things memorably and name things ways that you can spell. Like, yeah. Even if it's something that, maybe it's misspelled, maybe you have a word that you misspell every time, that's fine. Because if you misspell it every time, then that's great. That's great, as long as it's kind of the same. So, if a variable is declared and assigned outside a function, so the same way that in level design, you might declare like a public game object, whatever, to get public access to something. That's declared outside of, say, your start or update functions. But if you were to declare it inside, it has to be, you have to add a global modifier for things to work. So just like with love and Lua, we saw the idea that we had a local modifier. This one kind of flips the switch, where you have to define if it's global. So yeah. So naming variables. You can name them however many characters you want. But remember that you gotta type that variable 800 times. So keep it shorter. not a single letter. Single letters they're problematic, again. But keep it short, sweet, simple. You can drop vowels. That's a pretty popular one, is dropping vowels. So, like, when we talk about if we were using button, we would maybe just do BTN, or BTTN. So, yeah. So it has to start with a letter or an underscore. It can be followed by letters, underscores, or numbers, but the first thing has to be either an underscore or a letter. However, and again, this is, I told you guys when you had that little star for importing that it kind of reacts unpredictable. One of the things that's not imported when you use that star is any variable that has an underscore that's global. Because, of course it's not. Like, why do that? Okay, they are case sensitive. They can't be keywords. We saw this the same. They're pretty much the same as last time. So, and, as, assert, break, class, continue. It starts with an underscore. If it's got an underscore like in the middle of it, it's fine. Yeah, I thought I switched that slide over. I guess I didn't. Yeah, it's if it starts. If it starts, yeah. But yeah, so keywords are pretty much, they're the things that make sense not to use, because they could actually be a thing. And if you saw, there are break and continue, so we'll talk about that in a minute. Conventionally, inside of Python, they love underscores for variable names, so they're all lowercase, and then there's an underscore between each word. So this underscore is underscore a underscore variable. Whereas class names are camel case, so it's all one thing, but the first letter of each word is capitalized. I don't care. I don't like using underscores. I think that it's more trouble than it's worth. I think it's faster to type just the letters. So, again, as always, pick what you guys like to write in, or pick what you guys, just stick to something, basically. So, again, I thought I fixed this, and apparently I didn't. There's 6 basic types of variables. Boolean, which we all know, that's true, false. Number, which, again, you've got number at the top, but inside Python's like, yeah, there's a number, but there's multiple types of numbers. A string, which, again, we all know. It's immutable, and it cannot be altered. We saw this with Lua. That's where, like, if we wanted to concatenate, so squish 2 strings together, we had to actually create a new variable so that we could actually do that. A list, which is the basic array. Like, instead of us calling it an array, it's a list. They are mutable, which means that they can be altered, so list equals, and then square brackets, 1, 2, 3, 4, etc., etc., etc. And then we could say, hey, list square brackets 1 equals 24, and so then it would be 24, 2, 3, 4. So it's 100% happy with you changing it and dynamically allocating it and adding to it and subtracting from it, etc., etc., etc. Tuples look a lot like lists, and they actually act a lot like lists. However, they cannot be altered. And one of the ways that tuples gets used a lot is for coordinates. So things that you don't want to change anyways. Maybe you want to like have a pin on a board or something. And so, or if you want an RGB, like a lot of things use tuples for RGB code. And it's really fun to say. Like, I'm not gonna lie. When I learned what a tuple was, and I learned that a tuple was a thing, it was just, I would use tuples as much as I could just so that I could say tuple, because tuple is a fun word. It eventually loses all meaning when you say it too many times. It's one of those words where you then can't figure out whether you're saying it right or not. But it's a good word. So, dictionary. And this is going to be closer to kind of how we saw, or we could use that weird, if we set the indexes for our Lua stuff. So, like, remember when we were doing Lua, if we didn't give it a pair, it was automatically, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, etc., etc., etc. But we could give it, like, we could say, hey, name equals this, name equals that, for each of the things. So you can do dictionaries, and dictionaries are really cool. Dictionaries are really great and wonderful to use, because the whole point is that you can, it's a great way to think of as like mini structs for those that are programming savvy, or it's a great way to hold, like a list of stuff that's all dealt with once. So like dictionary, name, heartbreaker, type, hammer, damage 52. So to hold everything you need for something. And you may or may not use them. I use them a lot, especially for text adventures. Because you can do things like this where you kind of store all the data that you need. Yeah. So how do you declare a variable? So unlike Lua, where we could just like name a variable and not do anything with it, and it'd be like, okay, I'll just assign it my null value, no problem. Python doesn't roll that way. Python says you have to give it a value when you initialize it. So if you don't know what it's going to be, you call it none. So x equals none. As you can see so far, we haven't been using semicolons. You don't need to use semicolons, but you can. They're understood. Just like the way with Lua, they're understood. If that actually helps you guys, like maybe you're in a C++ or a Java course or C# course, and it's driving you insane not to use semicolons. Semicolons work here. Nothing will get angry at you. So again, you can have multi-line statements. So all the following are the same. A equals 1, B equals 2. Don't do this one. A equals 1, B equals 2 all on the same line like that. It's hard to see. Your brain will automatically kind of push that 1 and that B together. So it's going to be A equals 1, B equals 2. And that's not what it means. And it's a pain in the butt. However, this one tends to be pretty popular. A comma B equals 1 comma 2. And then this is the way, if you do want to do it kind of like A equals 1, B equals 2, you're going to do it with a semicolon between them. How we did math.random inside of Lua. Yeah. So, you can do whatever you want, however you want. Life is good. So, like I said, internally, Python views numbers differently. And they actually view numbers differently in 4 different ways. Plain integers, long integers, floating point numbers, and then complex numbers. You don't really need to understand that. Just note that, it's got control for big numbers and little numbers and crazy numbers. So, and good news, guys, because I know you all want to use this. You can also use octal and hex. And some of you under your breath are going, no. And others who are under your breath are going, I have no idea what that is. And then others of you are still in dreamland and have no idea what I'm saying. Yeah. But so, octal and hex work here. If those are things that you're used to doing. I'm not going to ask you to do any octal or hex. That's a Scott thing. That's a Scott thing. So doing math. Addition, subtraction. Multiplication, division. However, you do have to be careful with not casting. Integers will... Well, and not always. Sometimes they will round down, sometimes they will round up. So, we know that 5 divided by 2 should be 2.5. Okay, at least I know that, and I'm assuming that most of y'all can do that math. However, that's not 5. What it gives us is a 2. And then if we do 5 divided, okay, let's add a float in to make sure that this actually works. 5 divided by 2.0 will still give us a 2. So if it's going to have a decimal point, you have to cast to floats. So, yeah. So basically, it's floor division. It divides and drops the remainder. However, occasionally you'll run into something where it actually divides and then adds if that remainder is too close to the next number. So, the same way our little modulo operator works here. So, or no, this is floor divide. Floor divide is this guy. Floor divide is this guy. I lie. Wow, it's too early on a Saturday. Floor divide is the double slashes, so if you want to divide and drop the remainder, you can do that. However, if you want to find the remainder instead, we're just going to use our modulo operator. And then exponents. So, where we would have to do math.pow inside of Lua, or use the little caret, we just use 2 asterisks, or 2 multiplication signs, to do our exponents here. So 5 to the power of 2, which equals 25. 2 to the power of 7, which is 128. So this is really helpful. It's one of my favorite things about Python, is being able to do exponents that way. Boolean. This should be capitalized. Again, I thought I updated this one for you guys. I guess not. I don't know. Okay, so true and false. It is a capital T and a capital F. I'm pretty sure it's a capital T and a capital F. Okay, whatever. Yeah. So be careful with capitalization here and things like that, because they recognize one and they don't recognize the other. And then, just like everything else, it uses the double equal sign if you're checking if something is, and it uses the word not. We've got some functionality for the exclamation point equals, but we also use the word not. So instead of putting the exclamation point and then whatever your variable is, you do not variable name. Now, we talked a little bit about this in Lua, that there were some things that were a little weird about what returned false and what returned true. What will always return false is going to be none, which is our nil operator. False. 0. Empty strings, lists, dictionaries, and tuples. And then objects from classes that have the special method non-zero, which we won't really talk about because you don't need to know about it. And objects from classes that implement length, or len. Again, you're not really going to have to worry about that either. So the only one on this list that's a little strange is going to be this one, this 0. And we haven't really seen it yet. And we're not going to see it. I don't think JavaScript does it. 0 is a strange number, because depending on the language, depends on how 0... of course. No. Wait an hour. Depends on how 0 works. In some languages, 0 is always false. In some languages, 0 is always true. In some languages, 0 will error out and it's not true or false. And in some languages, it's both and none at the same time. In the same way that in some languages it's positive, in some languages it's negative, in some languages it errors out. So, 0 is a funny beast. Logicals. These all look the same. None of this is surprising, right? Less than equal to, greater than equal to, is comparison, is not comparison, and or not. So again, instead of using the double ampersands or the double straight lines for or and that you see in languages that you're maybe used to. We still use the word and or, just like we did with Lua. So, not X. It returns true if X is true and false otherwise. Yeah. So data structures, list tuples and dictionaries, yay! We are back to normal programming where the indices start at 0. Again, that's one of the things I actually enjoy that about Lua because it's easier to teach. But we're back to zeros. However, Python is a giving mistress, or god, however you want to put it. And if you just want to generate a sequential list inside of a tuple or a list, you can literally tell it, hey, a range equals, and then the start of the range and the end of the range, and you're going to see that it's going to drop that first one. It'll populate the list with 1, 2, 3, 4. Now, this is important to remember because, like I said, when we were talking about Lua, when we talked about random, and we talked about, well, which one is it going to, like, include both of them? Is it going to drop one of them? How does it do this? Python likes to drop the first one. So, always remember it drops the first, but it keeps the last. So, 1, 2, 3, 4, and it dropped that 0. We already talked about this. Immutable, so it cannot be changed. You have to, like, concatenate and make a new variable to store the new values. Our strings, and tuples. Mutable, so things that you can change and alter on the fly, are lists and dictionaries. If you've taken classes like C++, where you have this idea of can an array be dynamically allocated, and the answer is sort of. Inside of Python, basically mutable stuff, so the list in the dictionary can be dynamically changed and allocated. Immutable, the strings and the tuples cannot. So that's kind of the difference there. If that makes no sense to you, then don't worry too much about that. It's fine. Strings! So just like we saw where in Lua you could use the single or the double little ticks, in Python we can use singles, doubles, sixes, triples. They're all strings! Yay! Yeah. So triple quotes, the reason to use these guys is specifically for multi-line strings. But, yeah. You'll see all of these, and it'll get confusing, but they all basically do the same thing. Yeah, except this is the one thing. If you use these guys, then you can have single ticks inside of the message. So, for and while loops. And I promise we're nearing the end. So we have a list that we've declared. Remember, this is our kind of array thing. And then all we have to do is say for thing in this list. This is definitely where I like Python over Lua as far as things go. So, for thing in this list, do the code. So for x and 1, 2, 3, 4, do code. A while loop, however, or not really, however, a while loop is while the condition, colon, do the code. Remember, colons are super important. Colons are things. And we have break statements and continue statements. So where Lua only had a break statement, Python lets us have both. So a continue statement is just like, hey, if I get to this point and you don't really want me to do anything, you just want me to like skip to the next part of this loop, just continue. Whereas a break will cancel out of everything. And the one that bothers students more than anything is that there is no do while loop. So you've got to just use a while loop. Sorry. Not sorry. If statements. If statements are super easy. If condition, do the thing. Else if, instead of else if, or if else, or if else, we use elif, condition, else. That's it. Compared to Lua, we don't have any of those things where we have to like end each of these with a statement that says end, which some people like, some people don't. And yeah. So that's it. That's what I have to say. Are there any questions about Python basics? Strings can be interesting. They're not so bad inside of Python, so don't worry too much about it. Oh cool. We're logged in. So, again, you guys have a link to my REPL in some way, shape, or form. I've given you whatever. So, like, you have a link to, for sure you have a link to this one. If you have a link to this one, all you've got to do is click my name, psipes, and you'll get all of my stuff. So, and some of it is actually organized. A lot of it is not, because why would I organize anything? However, one of your assignments is going to be to do pseudocode. And yeah, I have pseudocode. I have all the pseudocode that I wrote for this. So please don't directly copy, but if you're stuck on something, 100% feel free to check it out and to see how I do it. Again, just like with everything else, Python has a main. So you've got to have main, and then you can use... I do this separate, but you could do it in one big long thing. But yeah, so all of these are nicely commented for you. All of these use functions, because at this point, functions make life easier. Kind of the same way that we saw with Lua, it's best to have your things kind of at the top and then your main code at the bottom. So anything that you need to do first, you do at the top, or like you do it in order of how things are going to be done. Now, as far as the text adventure goes, like I said, this is my example. It's a blown out example. It's from years ago. So it was written in 2.7, which kind of shows a little bit how old it is. And when I was talking about dictionaries and things, these are dictionaries. So basically what I use them for is I set it up so that instead of it automatically always saying the same kind of, especially for when he was talking, so instead of always saying said or always saying he muttered, instead, if I have the language quiet modifier, it can pick from mutters, whispers, or jokes. I have a place list holder, so it creates names. It uses, it's got some names that are built in for races, things like that. So, yeah. And like I said, this one is way more blown out than anything else. It's got a sleep timer in it so that it actually does stuff. Um, but I'm not meaning for it to be hard. And if you're like, well, I'm not a storyteller, um, just think about it like having a conversation with somebody. Um, yeah, I'd love to have stories, nice stories from everybody. It doesn't have to be. I give you two that are fantasy based, but 100% give me, I don't know, macho action heroes or space adventures or run of the mill. Howdy neighbor, what'd you do today? Comedy or anything else. It's fine. It's just to show you to get kind of used to writing things. If you want to make it super nice, it's really fun. I mean, text adventures, I don't know how many of you guys like text adventures because text adventures fell out of fashion for a while. But, so you can see it's got a little timer here so that it's meant to give you, I needed to adjust it, but, yeah. And all of these are in here. You can see how I use them. But yeah, so like Whispering Dragon Lily is 100% a name that's built from that dictionary set. So if we replay it, it will be a different name where I've highlighted. So yeah, so we've got New Rivershire. So, there's lots of cool things you can do with dictionaries and stuff like that. It's probably the neatest as far as the data structures go, but inside of my Python folder, I do have this one, which I think I link in another assignment for you guys, which is an example of how to ask yes and no questions. And it's got a couple different options for how you could write it. And yeah. Yeah. It's got a couple of options. So, depending on how you want to do it. And how you do random in time. So, yeah. So, as far as what you have to do today, and if you haven't done this, remember this is a 25-hour course that's due today. So, yeah. This will walk you through. It will basically handhold you through Python. However, the one that I give you is Python 2 rather than Python 3. There's some minor differences. There's not too many great differences, but this will literally it'll walk you through. One of these I've signed up for and I've already done. One of these I haven't done. But basically it'll walk you through. And it's pretty nice. It's all in there for you. It's a crash course basically. So your grade is going to reflect how much you've finished. As far as if you finish 75%, you net 100. So that's about 19 hours. Yeah, it's technically due today. I will take it up until next week. Technically due today. Yeah. And then the other thing you have is do the thing. There's pseudocode to Python. So I do suggest that you do the Codecademy stuff first. Only because then you can it'll give you a better or a deeper understanding of Python rather than just looking at my slideshows. And then do the pseudocode to Python. And again, this is due technically tonight, but you got a week to do it without a problem. at this point, you should all know that if it's late, it's late. I don't care as much as long as it's within that week period. And if it's gonna be later than that, please just send me a message. Like, say, hey, life sucks. Can I get an extension? There's a good chance I'll say yes. Because I get it. I really, really do. So, yeah. So with that, you've got a Love Postmortem. Again, that's due next week. You have your Python adventure, which is due in 2 weeks. You have a text adventure. This is your reading for this week. And it's why text adventures are important. This should just be one person, not two. Let me just edit that real quick. We're getting down to the point where there's so few of you that it's like... Yeah. Because y'all are probably... We're gonna see. You probably will lose one more student from your class. Sorry, had to sneeze. All of it. All of the pseudocode that you have done for... All the pseudocode that you did for Lua that I had you right before that. So just those 5 questions. So back up here. Intro to scripting, DOS pseudocode. This one. This one. Wherever your pseudocode assignment is, wherever I managed to put that for you guys. Pick one. This one. This one. So these things. So the same thing that you did for Lua. I'm not asking you to do like the thermostat or anything like that. Just these guys. And that's just so that you can kind of get a feel for the differences and the similarities between Lua and Python. So 100%, if your Lua code is pretty strong, then you should easily be able to translate over to Python without too many problems. It's just learning the differences between them. Yeah, and make sure that you guys do your critiques on each other's games. That's important. Yeah, so this guy. So I'm asking you to do 4. There's literally only like 5 or 6 of y'all, or 7. I don't know anymore. So, just do the thing. Do the thing. I asked you to alphabetically before and after, but again, just do the thing for me. Okay. Are there any questions about what's expected, what I want you to do, how you're doing it, why you're just now hearing about this 25-hour course that I'm making you take? I'll take silence as either you guys are sleeping or no questions. Okay, so I have grades to do. Again, your midterm grades are due on Monday, so my plan is to get them all done today, and turned in. So, if there are no other questions, then I am going to say life is good, and I'm going to give you the rest of the time of class, because again, you've got that 19-hour thing. You have your pseudocode to Python, you have your text adventure, and you have your postmortem, and then the small article are all things that are you're gonna have to start working on. So, and for some of you, I'm sure you have professors that are having you turn in midterms until like tomorrow. So, um, yeah, y'all are free to go and frolic and have a wonderful Saturday. The weather is great. And I will see you next week where we will be talking about Pygame and Pixel.